Hello everyone, welcome to Super Coaching UPSC by Textbook. This is Venkatesh, your faculty for geography, and if you are following the recent current affairs, you will be seeing a good news for Indian monsoon. The global weather models have predicted that for the upcoming monsoon season, we're going to have La Nina conditions in the Pacific Ocean, which is good news for India because we are in the present season of El Nino, which is associated with the droughts, heat waves across India. But there is a talk that by around June, July, the events would be slowly shifting towards La Nina, and there is a fair chance of above average rainfall of India's monsoon, which is very crucial, not just for our for just our aesthetic appeal of having good climate, but also for replenishing our water resources. The frequent droughts which you see in the regions like presently Karnataka is under drought, the economy would be boosted, the water resources would be boosted, and that's a very good news for our country. So La Nina set to return in July, and will it impact, how it impacts India's monsoon? Let us study about what is La Nina and the relationship with monsoon. Right. Can anyone tell me what is La Nina? Can anyone tell me what is La Nina? You all know that the first important thing you need to understand that the events in the Pacific Ocean have a wider ramifications on our country. The events of Pacific Ocean have a wider ramifications of climate, not just in our country, but in general, so many regions of the world. Why? Can anyone tell me why the events of Pacific Ocean are having such kind of climatic events? If you need to understand for that, let us understand something called as the teleconnections. Something called as the teleconnections. What do you mean by these teleconnections? What do you mean by these teleconnections? Please understand that normally when you talk about climate, there is unequal heating because of which we have temperature. Unequal heating because of which we have temperature. Because of temperature, we have a variations of pressure. Pressure variations leads to winds. Winds, when they carry moisture, they yield rainfall. This is an idea of climatology. And such things can be impacted across the world, which we call it as teleconnections. So what are these teleconnections? Teleconnections are large scale, long lasting shifts in the atmospheric circulation that can affect much of the globe. So the atmospheric circulations are interlinked. If there is a variation of temperature, say when you're talking about temperature of Pacific Ocean, you are actually talking about temperature of an ocean which is almost a very huge one third of the globe, isn't it? So definitely any circulations of atmosphere variations in such a huge area will have a chain reaction across the world. So if there is a variation of temperature in the Pacific Ocean, it will lead to atmospheric circulations, and that atmospheric circulations variations can have an impact on rainfall in India. So in other words, why are you learning about this? There is a talk about the temperature variations in the Pacific Ocean will be changing the global atmospheric circulations through pressure and the winds, which will impact rainfall in India. That is the key thing here. I hope you have got it, all of you. I hope you have understood what is the meaning of teleconnections. So these are large scale. So there is a decent amount of ocean. Long lasting shifts in atmospheric circulation can affect much of the globe. You can imagine like something like a car. You have a car, the car has 4 wheels, all the 4 wheels are interlinked to each other. So it's not like one wheel is going in one direction, another car is going in another direction. So the global because how closely they are interlinked with each other. In a similar way, even the La Nina conditions, or else in other words, the atmospheric conditions of temperature and the associated climatic elements of weather, elements of weather and climate like pressure and winds are very, very interlinked with each other. Somewhere temperature on a broad scale are changing, it will have an impact in our part of the world. That is what the teleconnections are. One such teleconnections which we see in the Pacific Ocean is what we call it as El Nino and La Nina. Right? So what is this? One such specific condition which you find about temperatures in the Pacific Ocean is El Nino and La Nina. Before we understand about La Nina, I'll give you a brief idea of what is La Nina. What is La Nina, all of you? It is nothing but unusual cooling of what? Unusual cooling of sea surface temperature at the coast of Peru. Unusual cooling of sea surface temperatures at the coast of Peru or in the Pacific Ocean. And this unusual cooling will have a cascading impact of atmospheric circulations. Right. I hope you have understood. This is the base. Before we explain what is this cascading impact of atmospheric circulations and the changes, let me understand what are normal conditions during in the Pacific Ocean. So in the Pacific Ocean, the normal conditions which you find is there is a cold current which is coming up along the coast of Peru. There is a cold current. This current, as it comes up across the coast of Peru, you all know the oceanic circulations. This is what we call it as Humboldt current or the Peru current. And this current moves as part of the southern equatorial region and enters into in Australia and then circulates like this. Now, when you find in this way, normally what are you finding? You are finding that temperatures are cooler at the coast of Peru. Why? What is happening here is the water is moving from you see, whatever the water is coming up, this is the cold water because it is coming from which latitude? If this is the equator, these are the low latitude countries. So temperature is usually high or low? It is definitely, come on, tell me, temperature is low here. So because the temperature is low in the high latitudes, the water which is coming up is cooler, and here the water is dragging, the water is being dragged, the water is being pushed towards Australia because of the strong wind systems called as the trade winds. So you have the trade winds. These are the trade winds which blow like this. These trade winds are, imagine this is the Peru coast. The water is being dragged away from here towards Australia, and at the coast of Australia, warm water is being piled up. Now what happens at the coast of Peru? As the warm water is being driven, to compensate, there is a cool water which will be rising from the subsurface water onto the earth's surface. So the oceanic water, the subsurface and the deep oceanic water will be slowly start rising, which we call it as upwelling. Upwelling would be observed. Whatever the reasons, whether because of the coolness of the water which is coming from the southern side or else because of the upwelling, the temperatures here usually are cooler. This is normal condition. When the temperatures are usually here are cooler, what will happen? The next thing, this water is being dragged more towards Australia in the Australian conditions. Now because the water is being dragged, now which part of the globe are we talking now here? Is it not equatorial globe, equatorial regions of the world? In the equatorial regions, temperatures would be high or low? My dear, temperature would be high or low? It would be definitely high. Temperatures are high here. What will happen to the next level? If temperatures are high here, automatically pressure conditions would be low. It is a low pressure. Now, when there is temperatures are high, what is the process you will find? Convective currents. What happens to the things now? There are convective currents which would be rising, right? You see here, there is trade wind. These trade winds are moving towards Australia coast. They are bringing more warm water. So, warm water is piling up at the coast of Australia. Once it piles up, this is the Australian coast. You can see here Australia. The air is rising. Now, whatever the air is rising, now it is coming from the ocean. When the air is rising from the ocean, will it not give a decent amount of rainfall? So, Australia will get some kind of rainfall. And whatever this air rises, it will create a cell, a circular cell circulation. So, whatever the air rises here moves as part of the upper atmosphere, and at the upper atmosphere it will deviate into two branches, one towards the Indian coast or towards the Indian Ocean, the other towards the Peru coast. Now, one of the thing, whatever the air which is rising here and descending into the Indian Ocean, what will happen to this descending air? Will it not create high pressure on the ground? Definitely it is high pressure. We all know the logic. When air concentrates at the ground level, it is nothing but high pressure. So, there is a place called Mascaronian Islands. Mascaronian Islands. These Mascaronian Islands, the high pressure is strengthened. When there is a good contrast of high pressure, you can see here this is the high pressure, and India is already having low pressure conditions because of high temperature. When there is a good contrast, black and white, right? In other words, the pressure conditions are so varied. When there is a good contrast of pressure, high pressure conditions are strengthened, low pressure conditions are developed. Because of that, the winds will start moving up with a decent impact. When the monsoons are strengthened, when monsoons are moving really well, we have a good amount of rainfall. We have a good amount of rainfall. So, what are the normal conditions you have understood? The normal conditions you have understood is, first, you can see here, all of you, the normal conditions which you have observed here is, the first normal condition you have observed is cool temperatures or cooler temperatures at the coast of Peru. Cooler temperatures at the coast of Peru. Because of that, what happens? This is what we call it as Peru current. Then, warm water is dragged towards Australia. Or in other words, piling up of warm water, which we call it as Western Pacific Pool. Western Pacific Pool. You can see here, this is the Western Pacific Pool. What is happening? The region is equator. Temperatures are already higher here. Additionally, you are getting warm water. Cumulatively, there is more warm water. So, what is El Nino, La Nina? These are two cycles or two phases of observations of temperatures in the Pacific Ocean, where on one side you have cold water, on another side you have warm water. Normally, this is what you will find. During an El Nino year, what we observe is, instead of cool water here, it is replaced by warm water. Unusual warm water at the coast of Peru, and leading to changes of atmospheric circulations in the Pacific Ocean and its impacts across the world is what is called El Nino. La Nina, the existing phase itself, which is the normal neutral phase, which is cooler phase, which will be aggravated. that will be aggravated to much more cool. Cooler phase, very high cooling phase. If it is rainfall, it would be flood. If it is normal rainfall, when there is an El Nino, it would be drought. That is the linkage. Okay, so Australia Western Pacific pool you have. Then once you have a Western Pacific pool, what happens then? Convection from Western Pacific pool. That is the air rising. As this air rises, this is what we call Walker cell circulation. Walker cell circulation. Whatever the air which rises from Australia, it is not like it will go to somewhere into the outer space. It has to deviate and then fall down. After the tropopause, it cannot go into the stratosphere, mesosphere, and then into outer space. No. So whatever the air which is significantly rising, it will create a circulation. It will create a cycle of circulation. So one such cycle, such Walker cell circulation, one part of circulation descends into Indian Ocean. Another part at the Eastern Pacific Ocean, Peru. Eastern Pacific Ocean, Peru. Right. So whatever the, if this is Australia, the air which is rising, one part will move towards the Peru coast, the another part will move towards the Indian coast. And at the Indian coast, you can see here, normal conditions. If this is South America, this is Australia, the warm water is being moved towards Australia. You can see here, warm water, Western Pacific pool, air rising, as you can see the cloud here. And whatever the air which it rises, it will descend, it will give rainfall to Australia. And then, as this thing is continuing, you can see here, look at this. This is what we call it as thermocline. What is this? Thermocline. Because warm water is being dragged more towards Australia, you see the cold water is nearer to the surface. In other words, thermocline is very nearer to the surface. Thermocline is nothing but differences of temperature. Because of warm water being piled up, you see the cold water is much at a lower depth here, at the greater depths here, rather than here that there is no depth, almost nearer to the surface. Because of this cool water and this warm water, this phase is neutral phase. Now these things, when you find the air rising and descends into the high pressure, this will give rainfall to India. This is the La Nina condition. This is the normal condition. This normal condition, what would happen to the normal condition right now? It would be aggravated. In other words, it is much more high. So what happens? What is La Nina condition? La Nina condition, much more cooler temperatures. Much more cooler temperatures. See, this is not negative. This is not the opposite of what is the general phase. Whatever is there, just aggravate it. Much more cooler temperatures. Much more cooler temperatures would lead to much more warm water is being dragged towards Australia. Much more warm water being dragged towards Australia, that is more warm water, more convection from the Australia. So in Australia, instead of rainfall, you will have what? You will have floods. Floods. Once you have floods in Australia, whatever the air is rising, it will descend into the Indian Ocean. So high pressure in the Indian Ocean, high pressure in Indian Ocean would be strengthened like anything. High pressure in the Indian Ocean would be strengthened like anything. When there is good high pressure, when there is low pressure in India, the winds will not enter, will rush into India. That is when you will find more amount, more consistency of things. And imagine, the winds of monsoons are continuously being observed all the way from June, July, August, September. How can the wind systems consistently blow for 3, 4, 5 months? It is a product of circulations. So when you find such consistency, Indian monsoon will have, Indian monsoon would have decent amount of rainfall. Indian monsoons, the monsoons would be decent. So in other words, what is La Nina doing? La Nina is one phase of atmospheric and oceanic circulations observed in the Pacific Ocean. During the La Nina phase, the temperatures are cooler than normal in the coast of Peru, which will lead to atmospheric circulations of more warm water piling up at Australia, more convection at Australia. The air rising will descend and create significant strong high pressure conditions at the coast of the Indian Ocean Mascarene Islands, and the contrast of pressure between the ocean and the Indian landmass is what is needed for around the contrast of Indian Ocean landmass is what is needed for more amount of rainfall. The more high pressure of the Indian Ocean, the more the low pressure in the Indian landmass, better rainfall. Winds always move from high to low. This is becoming very high. This is what the role of La Nina on India's monsoon is. But one more criteria here. If you go to a restaurant, just because the food is good, you are not giving good ratings to it, no? You would observe the food, you observe the cleanliness, you observe the ambience, you would observe the kind of serving, you will see the discounts, you will see so many things. So, monsoon is also not one element. For monsoons to develop, you need to have multiple things. It is also another like car. For a car to start and then to move, it is not necessarily that we need to have good fuel. The car has to be good enough. There has to be fuel. There has to be there has to be a battery. If the car is good enough, fuel is there, but battery is not in working condition, the car will not move. Or if the battery is there, car is there, but the tire are punctured, then the car cannot move. If all the things are there and the car happens to be a gear vehicle, you have to put it in the it should not be in the neutral, it has to be in the first gear, then only the car will move forward. In other words, monsoon is a multi-dimensional factor. La Nina is one of the factor. If usually La Nina has decent say. So when La Nina is good, when La Nina is having, when we observe La Nina, we will have a good rainfall. In fact, we have 3 years, 2020, 21, 2022, we have triple La Nina, and we had a decent amount of rainfall in our monsoon time. So in other words, it is a good thing for us. But we have to wait and watch. We will be having our Indian Meteorological Department, which will be releasing its predictions sooner about the monsoons of 2024 and how it will be, how it pans out, how does the rainfall. Every month there would be observations by Indian Meteorological Department, which will give about the ideas. Overall, how do you think that, one question for you, how do you think that people are actually observing whether this year would be La Nina or this year would be El Nino? Can you understand and help me? It is nothing but they would observe the temperatures of the Peru. They would observe the temperatures of the Pacific Ocean. What we are observing right now is, we are at the peakest phase of El Nino, and the peak has been already achieved and the temperatures are actually dipping out. So temperatures are becoming cooler in Peru. And the peak is reached and then slowly they are dipping out gradually. And they are expecting that this phase would continue. And by around July this year, the temperatures would be so low that the El Nino is now replaced by La Nina. That is about this concept. I think you all have understood and liked the concept of these teleconnections, isn't it, all of you? The concept of teleconnections. Please understand, La Nina or El Nino is broadly these 4 words. It is just that unusual warming of temperatures at the coast of Peru will lead to lack of rainfall in India, whereas La Nina, unusual cooling of the coast of Peru, will lead to variations of pressure and winds in the Pacific Ocean, which will lead to strengthening of winds in the Indian Ocean. because of high pressure conditions in the Indian Ocean. So in other words, for La Nina, what will you remember? Cool temperatures at Peru, high pressure in Indian Ocean, good monsoon, wind, good rainfall for us. I hope this would remain the same because it is very much needed for our water resources, for our environment, for our economy, for the rural economy doing prosperous, because of good monsoon will always lead to a good economy. That's it about this video. Hope you all have understood this. Share this video to as many of people as possible so that they are learning, understanding, and if you have any doubts, you can always ask me in the comment section. I am more than here to help you. Right? That's it about today. Yes, thank you, Ishika. I hope you are having a right time. You have understood this topic really well, right? So if you are people who are not part of this, my Telegram channel, if you have any further doubts, you can always ask me by joining in the Telegram channel. Any further doubts you have, you can ask me. That's it about today. We'll meet again with a new topic. Until then, have a good time all of you. Thank you. Happy learnings. Read well. Thank you.